For over 2,000 years, Chinese history has told the stories of the terrible consort sisters, Empress Zhao Feiyan and her younger sister Zhao Hede. They were beautiful, they were ambitious, and they were ruthless. These stories describe how they controlled Emperor Chen with seduction, how they destroyed their rivals, how they killed emperor's heirs, and even how they caused the death of the emperor himself. In my previous video about palace maids in Han Dynasty, we talked about the tragic story of the palace maid Cao Gong, and how Zhao Feiyan forced Cao Gong to take her own life, all to keep their power. These are the stories of the Zhao sisters as monsters. But were they really monsters? Imagine the story of two impoverished sisters who used their talent and a desperate will to survive from the gutters and onto the throne. The world they lived in was not an easy one. Considering their circumstances, maybe they were just women trapped in the vicious environment of the Han Dynasty Imperial court. Maybe they were just victims in a much larger political game. Well, there are two sides to every story. Hey everyone, and welcome to Tea with Amy. Today we explore the stories of the most infamous consort sisters in Chinese history. We'll follow their spectacular rise and their brutal fall to ask, were Empress Zhao Feiyan and her sister Zhao Hede truly monsters? Or were they simply victims of a successful character assassination? To understand the world of the Zhao sisters, we must first understand the life of Liu Ao, who would later become Emperor Chen. Liu Ao was born in 51 BCE. He was the first son of the crown prince at the time, the future Emperor Yuan. And his mother was a lowly palace maid named Wang Zhenjun, whose position was elevated when she gave birth to the crown prince's first son. In 48 BCE, Liu Ao's father ascended the throne as Emperor Yuan. Naturally, Wang Zhenjun became the empress, and Liu Ao was named the crown prince. Wang Zhenjun's family members were granted titles and powerful positions in the government, which was common for the family of an empress. But while Empress Wang was granted all of the appropriate honors, Emperor Yuan did not love her. Instead, he soon found love in another woman, Consort Fu. And with Consort Fu, the emperor had another son, Liu Kang. According to the Book of Han, Liu Ao was actually quite promising as a young boy. He was a diligent student who loved the classic texts and was broad-minded and cautious. But as he grew into a young man, his passion for governance faded, replaced by an obsession with wine and women. Emperor Yuan became deeply disappointed in him and began openly favoring his younger son, Liu Kang. Emperor Yuan repeatedly tried to change the succession to make Liu Kang the new crown prince. The Wang family, determined to defend their newfound status and power, fought back desperately. They allied themselves with conservative court officials who argued that deposing a legitimate heir without cause would bring disorder to the empire. Some accounts claimed that Empress Wang herself tearfully pleaded with the emperor during court sessions, refusing to eat and appealing to his sense of duty. In the end, it wasn't love that saved her son, but political pressure. Emperor Yuan, facing a unified front of ministers and his own wife's family, was forced to back down. Empress Wang has won for now, but Consort Fu is not entirely out of the picture yet. The conflict between them was far from over, and Consort Fu will return later in the story. In 33 BCE, Liu Ao ascended the throne as Emperor Chen, and the now Empress Dowager Wang was determined to never be in a position of weakness again. She immediately appointed her brother Wang Feng as Grand Marshal, the highest commander in the government. Soon after, 5 of her brothers were ennobled as marquis on the same day, an event known to history as the 5 Marquis. The position of Grand Marshal would be passed down from one Wang relative to the next. The Wang family now held a real position of power within the empire. The Book of Han records the power of the Wang family with a chilling summary. The Wang family took charge of the government, and their authority shook the realm. In the beginning of his reign, Emperor Chen actually showed signs of being a capable ruler. Historical records document that he had a strategic mind and a capacity for political ruthlessness. Unfortunately, he did not govern with diligence. Having secured his throne and proven his authority, he chose to retreat. He let the Wang family handle the tedious work of running the empire while he carved out a private kingdom of pleasure, indulging in lavish spending and sneaking out of the palace in disguise. Maybe Emperor Yuan was right after all, and Liu Kang would have been a better emperor. Now, let's talk about Zhao Feiyan and her younger sister, Zhao Hede. The backstory of the Zhao sisters is limited in official historical records, so we have to turn to unofficial records to get a sense of what their lives might have been like, which are likely embellished and fictionalized. The Book of Han only tells us that they were commoners, born to a man named Zhao Ling, but the unofficial accounts are far more dramatic. Many of these stories say that Zhao Feiyan was born around 45 BCE, beginning her life as an unwanted child. Born to a poor family in the capital of Chang'an, she was abandoned in the fields to die. But for 3 days, the infant miraculously survived, a sign so strange that her parents took her back. The unofficial biography of Zhao Feiyan tells a more dramatic and legendary tale. It claims the sisters were not commoners at all, but the secret, illegitimate daughters of a royal princess. Their mother was the beautiful Gusu Junju, who began a passionate affair with a handsome court musician named Feng Wanjing, and twin girls were born. Terrified of her husband's wrath, the princess abandoned the infants in the wilderness. But 3 days later, finding them still alive, she was overcome with pity. She rescued them and secretly entrusted them to Feng Wanjing to raise. Unfortunately, Feng Wanjing soon passed away, and the sisters were left to fend for themselves. In this legend, Zhao Ling was not actually their biological father, but was instead a neighbor who adopted them after being impressed by their embroidery skills. Now, whether they had secret royal blood or were simply commoners, all of the stories agreed on one thing: the Zhao sisters grew up in poverty. An alternative biography of Zhao Feiyan describes that they survived by weaving and selling straw sandals. But things finally started to get better when their father, Zhao Ling, managed to place them into the service of Princess Yang E as dancers. In the princess's household, Zhao Feiyan discovered her talent for dancing. She developed her own unique, seductive walking style known as the Jubu, and her dance was so light that she earned the name that would define her legacy, Feiyan, the flying swallow. One day in 18 BCE, while slipping out of the court again, Emperor Chen decided to visit his sister, Princess Yang E. The best dancers were called to perform for the emperor. And then he saw her. In a court filled with proper, predictable noble ladies, Zhao Feiyan's dance was wild, innovative, and hypnotic. The emperor had never seen anything like it. He was instantly captivated. That very day, he brought her back to the palace. For many other women, it would have simply been a night in the emperor's bed. But Zhao Feiyan was not any other woman. The unofficial biography of Zhao Feiyan claims that when the emperor summoned her to his chambers, she refused him for 3 consecutive nights. She made a seduction gamble by playing hard to get, and it paid off. She had him completely hooked. Almost immediately, she was raised to the position of Jieyu, one of the highest consort ranks. But Zhao Feiyan knew her position was dangerously fragile. She understood it was not a question of if the emperor's eyes would wander, but when. Instead of waiting passively for a rival to emerge, she decided to choose the next favorite herself. She told the emperor that her sister Zhao Hede was even more beautiful than she was. The emperor was intrigued and sent an attendant to summon Zhao Hede to the palace. But Zhao Hede also knew how to play hard to get and refused to go. She told attendant that she could not go to the palace unless she was directly summoned by her sister, framing her refusal as an act of loyalty. The emperor had no choice but to turn to Zhao Feiyan for help. With the emperor's blessing, Zhao Feiyan then sent her sister a formal invitation, officially bringing Zhao Hede into the palace, not as a rival, but as a partner. The two sisters, once huddled together for warmth on the streets of Chang'an, were finally reunited within the palace walls. With both sisters now in the imperial palace, they began to capture all of the emperor's attention. At this time, the empress was Empress Xu. She had been Emperor Chen's wife since he was the crown prince. But their affection had long since faded. According to the Book of Han, in 18 BCE, a scandal erupted when the Empress Xu's own sister was discovered using witchcraft to curse other consorts. Zhao Feiyan and Zhao Hede reported this to the emperor. An official investigation was launched, which implicated Empress Xu, and she was formally deposed and confined. While the official record is brief, later storytellers would frame this sequence of events as the sisters' first ruthless power play, a calculated move to eliminate their primary rival. We will never know the true motives, but the path was cleared. In 16 BCE, Emperor Chen wanted to make Zhao Feiyan his next empress. However, Empress Dowager Wang objected to Zhao Feiyan's humble origins, conveniently ignoring that she herself originally was a palace maid. But Emperor Chen was determined to choose Zhao Feiyan. He responded to the objections by making her father, Zhao Ling, the Marquis of Chenyang. This elevated Zhao Feiyan's family status, and she was no longer a commoner. There was no excuse left to stop her elevation. Zhao Feiyan was made empress, and Zhao Hede was granted the title of Zhao Yi, which was the highest-ranked consort position under empress. Now, earlier we mentioned that it was common for family members of the empress to be granted powerful government positions. However, the Wang family controlled the courts and blocked this from happening. Emperor Chen knew he couldn't challenge the Wang family on this, so he gave the Zhao sisters his undivided personal affection and favor instead. The emperor built Zhao Hede the magnificent Palace of Bright Sunlight. The central courtyard was scarlet, and the interior of the hall was newly lacquered. The thresholds were decorated with bronze and coated in gold. The stairs leading up to the hall were built of white jade, and the horizontal beams exposed on the inner wall were decorated with gold rings and were also embedded with lantian jade discs, bright pearls, and kingfisher feathers. Unofficial accounts also claim that when Zhao Feiyan felt slightly ill and refused to eat, the emperor personally knelt by her bedside to feed her, and he built her the legendary 7-jeweled windproof terrace for her to dance in. So what was the secret to their allure? Legend has it that Zhao Feiyan was so impossibly light that she could dance on the palm of a hand. The emperor even ordered servants to hold up a crystal plate while she danced on it, her movements like a swallow gliding on glass. Another tale took place on a high platform by the Taiye Pool. As she danced on this high platform, a sudden gust of wind caught her skirt, lifting her into the air like a kite. As the wind billowed her skirt, she cried out in joy, as if she was about to be carried away to the heavens. Surrounding attendants rushed forward, grabbed her silk skirt, and pulled her back to the ground. The creases left in her skirt were seen as a mark of a divine moment, and even started a new palace fashion trend. While Zhao Feiyan was a captivating performer, her younger sister, Zhao Hede, offered the emperor an escape. She filled his life with games and laughter. It is said that he would chase her through the Tongxian Men, which was a complex of 10 halls linked like a maze. playfully pursuing her but never quite catching her. Other accounts claimed that Zhao Hede even turned her bathing ritual into a private game of teasing modesty with him. Apparently, the emperor liked to watch her bathe, so she would deliberately draw the curtains or have maids obstruct his views at the last moment. These playful games kept the emperor intrigued and offered him a sense of freedom he couldn't find anywhere else. For an emperor who often fled the duties of the court, Zhao Hede wasn't just a beautiful woman, she was a sanctuary. She was his source of calm and peace. And then there was the magic that was said to power this allure. The Zhao sisters were said to have used a mysterious pill known as the Xiji Wan. These pills, when placed in the navel, were supposedly make one's skin flawless and give off an intoxicating natural scent, making them irresistible to the emperor. Unfortunately, some accounts claimed that these pills were what made the Zhao sisters infertile, which could be why they never bore the emperor any children. But even without children, the Zhao sisters had already captured the emperor's heart. The sisters' unified efforts has allowed them to win the emperor's favor and control the inner court. But without other rivals, the only person left to compete with was each other. The pressure of shared power began to poison their bond, starting with a shift in favor. Zhao Feiyan was the empress, the official mistress of the palace, but Zhao Hede became the empress of the emperor's heart. As time passed, the emperor's favor for Zhao Feiyan began to fade, and he became addicted to Zhao Hede's softness and charm. He even remarked that while Zhao Feiyan had to rely on exotic perfumes, Zhao Hede's body was naturally fragrant. Historical accounts also note that Zhao Hede's palace of bright sunlight was so magnificent that it made Zhao Feiyan jealous. The emperor favored Zhao Hede so much that he once told an attendant, "Since ancient times, a ruler has never had two empresses. If it were possible, I would make Zhao Hede an empress as well." Zhao Feiyan was a stunning performance he admired, but Zhao Hede was an addicting reality he could not live without. The official biography of Zhao Feiyan claims that as the emperor's passion shifted to her sister, Zhao Feiyan began taking lovers in a desperate attempt to conceive an heir. And to compete, Zhao Hede did the same. The rivalry was no longer just for the emperor's affection, but for the chance to produce a son that they could present as the emperor's own. This story even describes a fight that the sisters had over a handsome palace guard named Yan Feng. But just as their fight reached its peak, Zhao Hede cried out. She looked at her older sister and reminded her of their shared past, of the life they had fought so hard to escape. "My sister, have you forgotten those long nights together in the cold? When we couldn't sleep, I would press my back against yours just to keep you warm. Today we have finally achieved this high position, and we have no enemies on the outside. Must we now fight each other on the inside?" At these words, Zhao Feiyan froze. In that moment of shared vulnerability, the rivalry was forgotten, and they were once again the two impoverished sisters against the world. They knew that if one of them fell, the other would surely follow. The Zhao sisters were a team once again, but they were still never able to have any children. Remember Consort Fu from the beginning of our story? Consort Fu was a rival of Empress Dowager Wang many years ago, and she never gave up on her own chance to power. In 8 BCE, seeing that the Zhao sisters did not have any heirs, Consort Fu privately sent them gifts to ask for their support of her own grandson, Liu Xing, as the crown prince. The Zhao sisters knew that the Wang family would come after them after the emperor died, and having Consort Fu and a crown prince's support would protect them, so they agreed with Consort Fu's plan. They spoke favorably of Liu Xing to the emperor, praising his intelligence and suitability to the throne with effective pillow talk. Emperor Chen was convinced, and named Liu Xin as the crown prince. Unfortunately, the winds changed too quickly. On a spring morning in 7 BCE, Emperor Chen was suddenly found dead in the Palace of Bright Sunlight, Zhao Hede's residence. The Book of Han records that the emperor, who had always been strong and healthy, was getting dressed for his morning duties when he suddenly collapsed, unable to speak, and died within hours. Many historians interpret this to mean that Emperor Chen died from a stroke. Immediately, the court exploded with rumors, which were later captured in the folklore texts. One rumor claimed that to fuel the emperor's desires, Zhao Hede had been giving him potent aphrodisiacs, and on his final night, she had given him a fatal overdose. The scandalous circumstances of the emperor's death provided the perfect weapon for their political rivals. The Empress Dowager Wang, who had long resented the sister's influence, saw her opportunity. She publicly blamed Zhao Hede for the death of her son and launched an official investigation. Rumors then began to spread that Zhao Hede was also responsible for the death of Emperor Chen's sons. Trapped, disgraced, and with her only protector gone, Zhao Hede knew there was no escape. She chose to take her own life before the investigation could be completed. With her sister dead, Zhao Feiyan knew she was next. The Wang family wanted complete control of the court, and Zhao Feiyan's previous role as the empress became a liability they wanted to eliminate. Emperor Chen's death was too sudden, and Empress Dowager Wang moved too quickly. Zhao Feiyan couldn't save her sister, but she had to try to save herself. She moved to fulfill her promise to Consort Fu from the year before, and pushed the crown prince Liu Xin onto the throne as Emperor Ai. In return, Emperor Ai honored Zhao Feiyan as the new Empress Dowager, temporarily protecting her from the blame of Emperor Chen's death. With the new emperor's support, she managed to push through some of her own relatives into government roles and tried to build her own power base. But her efforts were too little, too late. Their new appointments lacked real authority. The most powerful positions in the government were already held by the Wang family, and they had no intentions of letting go. At this moment, the court had an unprecedented problem. There were 3 powerful Empress Dowagers alive at the same time. There was the newly minted Empress Dowager, Zhao Feiyan, who held the least power. Then there was the most senior, the now Grand Empress Dowager, Wang, whose family members held many of the most powerful positions within the government. And last, there was Consort Fu, the grandmother of the new emperor. While not officially the Grand Empress Dowager, Consort Fu effectively held that power by having the most influence over Emperor Ai. Caught between 2 powerful Grand Empress Dowagers, Zhao Feiyan knew she couldn't win against them. She had to choose a side, and she chose to fully ally herself with Consort Fu. The Book of Han describes their new dynamic with a single, powerful sentence. Grand Empress Dowager Fu was gracious to Empress Dowager Zhao, and Empress Dowager Zhao gave her loyalty in return. At first, it worked out. The court was in a moment at peace, but it did not last. A few months later, in 6 BCE, an official named Xie Guang submitted a report to Emperor Ai. This report provided what it claimed as new evidence and accused the Zhao sisters of being responsible for killing Emperor Chen's heirs. The first case it detailed was from 12 BCE. Apparently, a palace maid named Cao Gong had secretly given birth to a son by Emperor Chen. The report included testimony from a prison official and claimed that Cao Gong was poisoned, and that the child was taken away, never to be seen again. The report then claimed that in the very next year, in 11 BCE, it happened again. The consort Lady Xu had given birth to the emperor's son. When news of this birth reached Zhao Hede, she confronted Emperor Chen in anger. after which the infant was taken away in a basket and killed. The accusation was that Zhao Feiyan must have worked together with Zhao Hede for these crimes, and she must be punished. With the alleged facts presented, it seemed that Zhao Feiyan's fate was sealed. But then the story gets even more complicated. After Xie Guang's accusation, another brave official named Gen Yu stood up and argued that Emperor Chen was not a fool. He claimed that Emperor Chen wanted to make sure that the throne was passed to a grown adult successor, so that the next emperor would not be a child controlled by a regent. So he made the cold decisions himself to eliminate his infant heirs. This opens the door to a whole new possibility, where the Zhao sisters were simply scapegoats of the crimes of others. First, let's consider the timing. Xie Guang's report was filed only after the emperor was dead. If the evidence was so clear, why was nothing reported while the emperor was still alive? In addition, Xie Guang's report is completely one-sided, compiled from testimony likely extracted under extreme political pressure or physical duress. The voices of the Zhao sisters are completely absent from the report. I do want to point out here that the Book of Han also records Xie Guang filing complaints and accusations of corruption against members of the Wang family. So he most likely was not a simple Wang family puppet. However, it makes the timing of his report against the Zhao sisters all the more interesting to question. Suddenly, the entire story is turned on its head. The emperor was no longer a victim, he was a calculating killer. And the Zhao sisters were not evil masterminds. They were simply scapegoats, providing the cover for the emperor's own ruthless act of statecraft. Faced with a difficult situation, Emperor Ai was not sure what to do and could not make a final judgment. The Book of Han notes that he chose not to pursue the investigation further, partially because he was grateful to Zhao Feiyan for supporting his ascension to the throne. But his protection only went so far. While Zhao Feiyan herself was spared, the Grand Empress Dowager Wang demanded some form of justice. As a compromise, Emperor Ai stripped the Zhao family members of their newly granted titles and exiled them. Zhao Feiyan was safe, but she was once again completely alone. Unfortunately, Emperor Ai was short-lived. In 1 BCE, Emperor Ai died, also leaving no heir. After Emperor Ai's death, Grand Empress Dowager Wang and the Wang family moved quickly to secure their position. They did not want another emperor that was not fully under their control. They bypassed all adult candidates and placed Emperor Ai's 8-year-old cousin Liu Kan on the throne as Emperor Ping. With the child as emperor, Wang Mang was appointed as regent. Now in command, Wang Mang's first order of business was to eliminate all old political rivals. He had Consort Fu stripped of all her titles and placed under house arrest. Facing complete disgrace, she was forced to take her own life. But that was not enough. He then ordered for her tomb to be dug up. The official seals of her imperial titles were confiscated from her coffin, and she was reburied in a commoner's grave. Grand Empress Dowager Wang had finally won her long rivalry with Consort Fu. And there was no escape for Zhao Feiyan either. Wang Mang formally deposed her from her position as Empress Dowager, and a month later he dealt the final blow, demoting her to the status of a commoner and forcing her to take her own life. The flying swallow flew no more. But to fully understand the forces that destroyed the Zhao sisters, we need to see what happened next. With the last remnant of the Zhao sisters' power erased, the Wang family was now in full control. A few years later, around 6 CE, Emperor Ping had grown older and began to resist having a regent making decisions for him. This was not acceptable. It is believed by many historians that Wang Mang responded by having the young emperor poisoned, making him the last official emperor of the Western Han Dynasty. After Emperor Ping's death, Wang Mang placed the 1-year-old infant Liu Ying on the throne as a placeholder, but never officially crowned him as the emperor. In 9 CE, Wang Mang was ready and no longer needed a pretend emperor. He declared himself as the new founding emperor of his own new empire, the Han Dynasty. This historical context provides a powerful motive for the Wang clan. The family that used the charge of destroying the imperial bloodline to eliminate the Zhao sisters was the same family that would ultimately bring the Western Han Dynasty itself to an end. So in the end, we're left with two very different perspectives on the Zhao sisters. From one perspective, they were symbols of temptation and corruption, accused of bewitching an emperor and murdering his children. From the other perspective, they were scapegoats, victims of court politics, casualties of a political assassination. The legends of the Zhao sisters are dramatic narratives of seduction and ruling. However, the historical reality is a brutal mess of court politics where no one is truly innocent. So we come back to our original question. Were the Zhao sisters truly monsters? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed today's topic, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Stay curious, stay magical.